good chatter that goes on as we gather together. It's always delightful for me. I want to mention just a couple things before we jump in here, but there's still some openings tomorrow for some coffee times and maybe a couple openings for lunch. The lunch tomorrow is going to be at 12:30. It's been scooted around a little bit, and there are a couple of coffee times at 9 and 2. 2:30. So if some of you would like to jump in on those coffee times and or the lunch, if that's an available space with you, we welcome you to do that. That'd be great. I am happy to introduce Sandra McCracken to you today. I've known about Sandra's work for a long time. I had the privilege last night of getting to know her as a person and hearing about some of what makes her heart sing and what makes her work inviting and invigorating. And I know some of you have already had a chance to interact with her today, and you found out what a genuine person she is and how dedicated she is to her work and to her art. And you have a lot to learn from her. I've already learned a lot from having spent a couple of hours with her. But let me officially tell you some things about her. Over the course of 8 critically acclaimed studio albums, Sandra has developed a body of work that encompasses hook-driven melodic pop, no depression-style Americana, contemporary recasting of classic hymns, and even children's music as part of the Nashville alternative folk supergroup Rain for Roots. Her music has been featured on ABC's Grey's Anatomy. Her 2013 solo record, Desire Like Dynamite, charted as one of Billboard's top 50 heat seekers, and she is currently finishing a new album called Songs. She's originally from St. Louis, Missouri, but has lived in Nashville since 1995. She received her BA in Music Performance from Belmont University in 1999. In addition to her vocation as a recording artist and songwriter, Sandra is a founding member of Indelible Grace and Rain for Roots, scriptural songs for children. She has been an instrumental part of the retuned hymn movement, reviving old hymn texts for modern worship. She has penned songs for the group Caitlin's Call and has recorded 8 albums of her own, in addition to contributing to many others. Sandra currently serves as a worship minister at St. Mary of Bethany Parish, a church in the Anglican tradition located in East Nashville. We are very glad that you're here, and welcome to Baylor.
In front of me, just feeling like, okay, just talking is another thing. So feel free to interact. I'm not a real formal speaker, and I would love for this time to be useful for you all as well. So that kind of gives you a little background. It's kind of all over the map as I hear it back. And wow, those are totally different kind of things I've been doing, and yet they hang together here and there. So I would say I have a lot to learn from you all in the study of church music, more formally the study of church music. I think growing up in the church, I have seen and observed a lot and taken that in, and yet my role as a music director at a church is very new. We planted this church in August of this last year, so just a baby church, and there's some advantages to starting there because there was not I wasn't walking into an already established role. I was able to just come in and say, okay, here's, probably half of the congregation were from some sort of Episcopal or Anglican background. I'm from a Presbyterian background, largely, and then about the other half are probably from various places, some not church, some non-denominational, fair amount of Baptists. So it's really picking songs week to week. Just that one role is very challenging, especially when I'm coming from this background of 15, 20 years of coming in as a special guest. You can just kind of come into town, do a couple of songs, and then head out, and nobody, there's a different skill set for that, where you can come in, and it is a useful, I feel like that has been fruitful work, but it's different, and to lean into this local community has been so anchoring for me. Like, I feel just hungry for that, to know and be known, in a way that connects to the music that I'm making and that actually helps the creativity that comes out of my work. It's like it's rooted from the ground up in that sense. So the more, I would say over the years, as I look back, the more healthy and holistic I can be as a human being, connected to family and relationships and community, the more the music that I make has that same kind of cohesion, you know? And scripture plays a huge part in that, like when I'm soaking in, and the years that my mom taught me memory verses and sang these little songs, and she doesn't have the greatest pitch, but she loved that, you know, and it was that there's something contagious about that starts early in our communities and the formation of our communities. So kind of working backward, now I'm kind of in the space of church music, but for the majority of my adult life, since graduating from college, I put out my first independent album, and I was kind of steering clear. I'd been in Nashville at that point for 4 years, and I was steering clear of Christian music labels. I just felt like that was a little bit, I didn't like the idea of being marketed by way of, so the art I was making at the time was about all of life. One of my favorite hymns is "This is my Father's world," and when it says He shines in all its fair, there's this, I felt like that gave me permission, knowing a hymn and a text and an idea like that, I had permission to write songs about heartbreak, about walking in the woods, about friendship, about drinking coffee, about whatever. I mean, I feel like as a person of faith, the category of what makes a Christian sort of comes later. You know, it's first the art that you make is just how you see the world, and then so I was resistant to Christian labels, and I avoided it, and I wanted to just see what would naturally develop, and that was a tricky thing to do living in Nashville, because I had a lot of friends that were in that business. And it was probably, as I look back on it, it was a provision for me, because the industry has changed so much in the last 15 years. About 15 years ago, people actually bought records and bought albums, you know? Whereas now, the labels have a hard time making sense, even from just pragmatically, whether Christian labels or not. It's been such an advantage to have not had business success with a whole team of people and their jobs counting on me, and so I've been able to stay under the radar and just kind of make a living and make the art that I felt called to make at each stage that reflected the life I was living. And I think it's afforded me this broad space to make both children's music and church music and singer-songwriter Americana stuff. You know, it's a marketing nightmare, but it's a good living if you can kind of keep, you know, it's kept the lights on, let's say, you know, and I feel really fortunate for that and to be able to maneuver. The other side of that is that, and kind of what's beneath that is a theology that would say that the work we do vocationally, whether it's within the church or out of the church, that it's not more spiritual if you're on staff at a church, and that God has made all these things good, and so it gives us this freedom. It just takes off that weight of categories and what's a good thing to do, and well, what if I'm not actually evangelizing, and what if this song doesn't really say the whole story, what if it ends really sad? And it's like, well, a lot of times the story, we don't know the complete story yet. So sometimes the lament, the end of Psalm 88 is like, darkness is my closest friend. We need to be people that can hold that whole thing out before, like as Christians, like when we go out into the world, we hold a full picture of what life is. And I feel like that is the invitation. I mean, God is not afraid of those questions that we have before him at the end of the psalm. He is near in that. And so I feel like that, you know, it speaks to vocation and to art making and kind of all of that, and why when I look back, I feel like my work has been such a wide span of things. So yeah, I would say in recent years, I have two young children, and they've really helped me to write and to think about what a singable melody is. They've been part of the work in these children's records we've done. So the Rain for Roots group that we were talking about earlier today, and it's called, the first one is called Big Stories for Little Ones, and it's, and my kids were just like singing these songs as walking around the house. I don't think there's anything that's taught me more about what makes a good song for a congregation than my kids teaching me how to, like hearing back, is this song fun? Like, do I want to sing it again when I get to the end of it? And does it have depth that can hold up? Like when I'm, like, so for them to sing it when they're 5 years old, that I kind of want to hear and need to hear that same truth when I'm 37. And so the content and the singability, and then also like how tricky is the melody. And if my children can sing it, it's really helped me in the congregational sense. Which doesn't mean dumbing it down, it just means being aware. And we were talking earlier today at lunch about, so when I started writing with the Indelible Grace music, and these are new tunes to old hymn texts, one of the first ones I wrote was Thy Mercy, My God, and it was based on a text from John Stalker in the 18th century. And I was just strumming a guitar, came up with the melody, and then later heard and had the opportunity to sing it with different congregations. And I realized that the melody was so stylized that it was hard to figure out where the downbeat was. Or some people would sing it really square and straight, and other people would try to match the lilt that I had when I originally sang it. And it was just sometimes awkward, you know, and I would back off. Typically, even now, when I lead that song, I back off the mic because I want to see how this particular group sings it, and then I sort of join in. But it made me think about, okay, so I'm moving out of singer-songwriter years and skill set, and then into, if I were to write for a group, it would be different. It would be, how do you pull yourself out of your own stylings and then into stylings? I mean, you know, that sounds funny. It sounds like I'm talking about my shoes. But some vocal stylings, you know, you have a way of, I don't know, based on the music you listen to, and I've listened to a lot of Bob Dylan, and that's not the most singable phrasing in the world. But there's still, there's a way of, what I do love about coming from more of a singer-songwriter background is that you hold in tension the advantages of expressive music like that. So you try to hold that and bring that in, and then you also bring in the other singability part where it's like, okay, the beats are sort of aligned, and there's syncopation, but it's not overly complex. And one of the ways that I've learned and that's been helpful to get outside my own head, and that is just singing with one other person or with a small group, and like playing a new song, and then hearing it back and realizing they have a hard time singing that. And so I think I've learned a lot, but I have a long way to go. So these last couple of years have been really kind of a good, it's a school, both the kids' music and the congregational side has been a school for me in terms of songwriting. I'll just kind of pause. What of that, do you guys have questions? Is there like a direction in there that you are curious about hearing more about? Are a lot of you songwriters? Songwriters, yeah. And texts, right? Like lyrics, or yeah. I've been encouraged today hearing all these names of like modern hymn writers. They're just not on my radar. I'm excited to hear more about that and to dig into that more. I feel like there is a largely unreached group of music listeners that would not listen to Christian radio, that probably listen to NPR, love Nora Jones, you know, just like a thoughtful bunch of people that how do we connect and resource the church in a way that songs can be both theologically rich, but not didactic, and also like not propaganda, but yet full of intentionality in what we sing, combined with the emotional quality of great pop music, where you just want to get to the end and you want to sing it again. And I think there is some of that. There is more than that than ever, maybe with just how much more connected we are to each other, and without the need of a big label standing in between. But there are still some challenges, and there's still, like, I would love to see you guys go out into the world as the people that come up with the ideas to how do we reach, how do we broaden and nourish the church with beautiful new music and new arrangements and new choral pieces. And, everything from, just leaving a lot of space for beauty across genre and background. And I never realized how limited my musical ability was until I started doing this every week. And then you just think, well, okay, I could play a concert and do that. And that's one particular thing, but I want this congregation to have a lot of exposure rather than just me playing these 3 chords with this one strumming pattern. And so I feel like it's humbling, and it's also the first step of me saying, okay, I need these other people in the congregation. Like, I need other musicians that have different backgrounds. Some of them listen to jazz records growing up. Another one has classical cello training, and working together because we are stronger and in the presentation of beauty than we could be just by being individuals. And that's the words of microcosm of the church at large. It's happening in the worship team and in the way your lives kind of run together on a Sunday afternoon or Wednesday night when you're rehearsing or choir rehearsal. The individual taking a place in the larger family. And it is what we're made for. And and I really feel like I've experienced that in this acutely in the change more fully into church music. And I hope that even in doing that, that I'll continue to be able to send things out to the larger church, but not for personal gain, but really just as, when I imagine this, like the larger church that doesn't listen to Christian radio, that may not listen to Christian radio, when I imagine that group, I don't necessarily just think of like my own stuff and my own ambition in that. I feel like, but I feel like there's so much, like even in this room represented, that we, rather than just relying on the commerce and the exchange of what sells records or what is charting high on CCLI, I feel like we have an opportunity to be stewards, and we have a responsibility and like a God-given relational currency that basically says we can choose what we sing week to week as a community, and with the emphasis on this local body of believers. I think there are songs that will become really, we will attach to deeply. There was a church in Houston that had some personal loss, and after some of that personal loss, they had really adopted one of my songs, and then they sing it a lot. They have a song called Can't Help Myself, which is kind of based on Psalm 121, and really, I marvel at the way God knits people's stories together. So I would never imagine somebody else singing that song, let alone a congregation. And then, just this last Easter, I was with them, and I had been kind of extended staff at this church for a year or so, and I was so moved by that. Like when I can get out of the way of this song, that I felt very personally expressive when I was writing it. But here it is, like attached to this particular community and this family of believers, and seeing them take communion and sing it, and it's just it's such an exchange of and a reciprocation of like God has met me, God has met you. He is doing it through music and through the songs we sing. So it feels like a great. It feels like an honor and also greatly humbling in the process of getting to do this. And so I think the more I get into it, the more I realize it's like the descent of the gospel. Like you go lower, and God continues to build and bring His kingdom in as we, rather than elevating ourselves. with Christ demonstrating his humility by becoming obedient to death, even death on the cross. And then the exaltation of that. That's like, there's just this ongoing picture. So I don't know. I feel like I could ramble forever. What thoughts or questions do you guys have? You can play a little bit too. It's a really beautiful poem. Anybody else? Yeah.
You've encouraged us to think more broadly than radio, as you see a lot of charts, and thinking that foundational song. Where like you encourage us to look and listen and really think about new sources of songs for foundations.
I feel like, I don't know exactly the answer to that. I feel like it starts with the local community and then the strength of those songs. The question to me would be, how do we get those songs to travel in natural ways? You know, like sending, I mean, honestly, I think about some of the, like when I first heard an Amy Grant record, or it was actually like one song, I remember my best friend in middle school was really into her, and we sang a song, and I'd never heard it before. I was like her background singer, just I think she wore a wig and everything. I mean, it was full on. We were like 12, 13 years old, and so before middle school. And but what I was thinking about today is that I didn't listen to Christian radio. Like, I didn't know. That didn't come through a natural channel. It came through friendship. So a lot of what we experience, and it's even more possible now because of the connection points, that things will spark. So if a congregation is attached to one song, chances are it will begin to kind of spread as people travel. And then I think having the resources available, having great lead sheets and SATV, and it's like, for a second I forgot the word, and other arrangements, you know, I think a lot of, like, having things ready so that if somebody says, hey, we'd love to do that song, you just like send it. And then CCLI, it takes care of itself. If it's registered, like, you don't have to worry about that side of it. But I think that can be a big part of it. And then, as far as the larger system, there probably, I think, would be some songs that would travel further than others. Some are going to be really localized and specific to that community, and that's okay, you know. And there's still really significant contributions there. But I think that's a good question, and it's one I'd love to see. Like, how do we prepare ourselves for that for those songs to travel, to resource the church, and can we do it in a way where it's not about the profit, you know, like to where we can just have those up for free, have great databases, have great hymn resources for people, and accessibility for that. And I kind of feel like the money will take care of itself, you know, like it'll be kind of like, it just, I don't know, it feels like putting serving the church as the centerpiece, and then the rest of it will, like, God will provide. I don't know, maybe that might be overly idealistic in one sense, but I feel like, in a lot of ways, like, the sustainability of my career is a demonstration of it. It's like, you know, I have not lacked what I needed, you know, taking care of my kids and paying the mortgage, and I just feel it, like, it's like that, who wrote the "'Tis So Sweet" is it Kirkpatrick? But how I proved him over and over. I mean, I feel like there's like this cycle of trusting God, and trusting God when it's painful or when you give more than you think you have. Like, not just saying, okay, I'm going to do the 10%, but like giving more and then expecting and waiting to see how He provides. It's similar with the investment of ourselves and our resources creatively, time, and our whole person, you know. So, I would love for you all to keep asking that question. Yes?
I just wanted to ask this because I'm hearing a lot of my same beliefs when it comes to contemporary songwriting and how we can kind of minister through contemporary songwriting. But what are ways that you recommend, like, kind of getting around that? I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to tell, isn't it? Like when you write something, you're like, I'm trying to say it as plainly as possible. But yet not, this is a fun example. A lot of times I think about, with writing, I think about Tom Petty's writing. And like, he is so direct and so plain, but it doesn't have that like sentimental thing that I feel kind of repulsed by sometimes. So that's like in the rock and roll space. I feel like I sometimes think like, what would Tom Petty do? And I'm like, I think about the language that he uses, and I'm so compelled by that. And that's not my natural instinct, because I'm much more of a, like I would love even, you know, a lot of the early YouTube music, and where it's a little more vague and abstract. That tends to be where I would start, or a little more, I don't know, just kind of leave some of that for you to guess at. But I think with him writing, it is useful to really speak clearly. So this last project that I've been working on is largely based on the Psalms and just direct from Scripture, and that has been hugely helpful to borrow these words and to try them on. And I kind of went through a hard year, and I thought, like, for a season I couldn't sing, and I was, then I could only sing hymns, and usually just like Ann Steele, and somebody who's just really brutally honest about, doubt, and then, and even confidence before God that feels complex, and yet coming out of that season, the only thing I wanted to sing or write were these borrowed song lyrics. And that was really healing to me, and songs are very plain in that way too. They're direct conversation, and I think that's affected even my prayer life, is because I have stopped being so pretentious with God, like not just saying these religious things, but like, man, and just talking to him like a conversation. How long have I been a Christian? And it's like, I feel like I've never really talked to God until this year, and talking out loud to him has for some reason helped, like so if I'm in a hotel room, or I know it's like a crazy person, but it's what you hear in the Psalms, like, why are you downcast? Put your hope in God. And hearing a psalmist say, oh my soul, like speaking to his soul, her soul. There's this way that we are taught to really not shy away from honesty in those ways. So I don't know if that helps, but so what the Psalms and what we talk about.
Almost kind of error when you're writing a hymn, be very direct and truthful, but when you're writing on the contemporary side, maybe more ambiguous.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, the contemporary, or maybe always just be as direct and plain speak as possible. The children's, when I think about like the children's music, I really speak, like when I talk to my kids, they're 5 and 7, I don't talk to them in a baby voice, I don't want to talk to them like with, and I don't always use huge words or anything, but I speak to them like I would speak to you guys, and I have always done that, and it just kind of, I think it's what my parents did with me. And so when I think about that, I think like that's a difference between, it's like there's the baby talk version, where you're trying to say something kind of like, you might understand, and then there's the just speak in a way that is like simple, and it's actually really challenging, but it's like if my son asks me how a battery works, and when I try to talk to him about how does a battery work, it's like there's a positive and a negative, and I'm using these words, and yet I'm trying to distill something that's pretty complicated, and with abstract concepts attached to it, and yet I am learning it, and it's like, wow, to teach it, you begin to understand something about it you didn't notice before. So I think it's something about differentiating, so plain speak is not the same as baby talk, and maybe trying to figure out what that is, and always doing that. I would say whether it's contemporary or in like structure, like always going for that plain way of talking. That's a great question.
You mentioned the Psalms and other things. Have you been inspired by themes of your local church context, being involved in birth or in congregation with your writing?
Yes.
What does those themes speak?
Absolutely. A couple of themes in our local community. One is has been the inclusion and the welcome of a group of refugees. So we are connected with this Burmese refugee group that were basically, there's an area in our it's a relocation, like federally. So there are people from, Africa and Burma and largely those groups, a lot of Hispanic from various places, and it's really diverse. So like the Walmart is just like, it's very multicultural and really beautiful. But that's a challenge for a community where you're like, okay, so what's the sermon illustration when we're all coming from totally different? So our services, we do have some kind of, we'll have like a Burmese service earlier in the day on Sunday, and then we join together more like occasions. So we did that route rather than trying to make it a completely multicultural service. And for a lot of reasons, which we could talk more about, but so that's been really, there was a song that came out of a songwriter retreat that I put together a couple years ago that was called All You Refugees, and it was from a song, and this is the first song on my record, but it was from a song, and then I saw it like come into the context of this new church, where I didn't expect that at all. So watching God orchestrate integration within themes and looking for it and expecting it. Another theme in our congregation, I think, is lament, and we have a lot of people that have experienced this loss in the last couple of years, even just in the congregation, 100 people. Wolterstorff has this great book, an essay. He talks about trumpets, ashes, and tears. So in a service, and every time we gather together, that the liturgy would have trumpets of celebration and gratitude of the way God has met us, and then ashes of repentance and confession, seeing ourselves, confessing it, and moving forward, and then tears of lament, that we would lament over the ways that we are broken, that the world is broken, and crying out before God to meet us and comfort us. So having these three elements, I've been mindful of those in song choices, and I've seen songs like that. Ann still has one called Dear Refuge and Warrior Soul. That's been one that I've been singing for a long time, that I feel like has pulled into the center. And another one that's new, that I wrote last year with a friend of mine in Houston called We Will Feast in the House of Zion. And it's a song about gathering around the table and anticipating the day that's coming when we sort of practice that now when we meet, and that there's a day coming where we will gather, and the sorrows and the things we're experiencing now will be like just a memory. We will look back and we will recount those things, but only to the point of saying, look at what God's done. And so those songs in particular have felt like thematic songs, and it's neat because I don't feel like I orchestrated any of it, but to just watch, and I feel like God does that as He builds His kingdom, whether we invite Him or not, whether we're aware of it or not. Like He's up to all kinds of good in our midst, and it's affirming to have a front row seat to that as someone on staff of the church.
You said you grew up Presbyterian. I'm curious, do you use more traditional hymns as resources for your songs?
I do. They kind of have snuck in there over the years, even in my singer-songwriter stuff. Like there'll be lines that come out of these hymns, and they've had a real shaping effect on my life. I feel like I can look back and see. Just the other night I was playing at a concert in Austin, and there was somebody at the concert had requested this song called Grace Upon Grace, which was from a Puritan prayer from this little book called Valley of Vision, which was just this beautiful, it has a terrible cover. Well, maybe not all the editions, but the one but it's such a beautiful book. And so one of those prayers became a song, and I've been singing it for a long time. And it occurred to me the other day that the song says, like, in every station, we go through these seasons of life that God meets us with grace upon grace. And so it kind of traces that. And as I played it the other night, it had been a few years since I played it, and I was really captured by the fact that that song is like kind of holding me, like that I used to, I played it here, and I played it 5 years before that, and I played, as this song goes with me and grows with me, it's still, because it's God's truth, like the capital T in those lyrics in that hymn, I can still find myself in it, and I can still stand up and walk around and find lots of space to exist there. And I think that a lot of those old hymns, How Firm a Foundation is one of those. That was like a good, hymn from my childhood. That was a challenging one for me because I remember it. I remembered it as a kid, and then it was like at my wedding, and then I really wrestled with it after a divorce. And I was like, it's basically, this hymn is it's vows. But what has transformed for me in the process is that God is the one who makes and keeps vows for us. Like that there is an ultimate reality to this, even when we lament the brokenness of the present moment, that this is ultimately true in a way that we can't get at to mess it up. Like it's not, it is, so I could sing that, a couple of years ago, and over some of those hard, dark times with tears, but with a confession of like, this is not the final word for me, and it was before, and it was with me, and it's like these hymns are companions that in a similar way to Scripture, but more connected to our culture and our words as we embody the kingdom of God coming into our midst. So, yeah, thanks for asking that. I do play a lot of things. I'd say probably 75% of the songs we're doing at the new church are hymns. It's also a great meeting point for people from different backgrounds, and pulling from Presbyterian, Baptist, like Methodist, like some of those hymnals, pulling some of the best material not that I'm subjectively best, some of my favorites, is a great center point for starting a church. Has been for me. I mean, not that I've ever done this before, but so far it's a good launch point because you realize how many people loved we have a pretty wide range of ages, and how many people loved Be On My Vision, Come Thou Found Every Blessing, and what are some of the other, what's the one about It Is Well With My Soul? Like, so those three are like just right in the center where everybody comes around those songs. And I love It As Well, especially because you hear like the male and female voices and the lows and highs, and you just drop all the instruments out, and just the beauty of our voices together it's like I would love that part. I love hearing and singing, sometimes I will just, get the instruments out of the way for that for a minute. So.
Would you be willing to sing for us?
Sure, I'm glad to. Do you need the microphone? Can I try to sing? Well, I've got a kind of a new one. Let's see. I've got a new one that's kind of based on the 23rd Psalm, and I'd love for you guys if you can sing it. It has like kind of a big chorus and adds some harmonies. And I was writing this with a friend of mine, my friend Thad Cockrell, who's actually like in a rock band called Leaves, but he we were working on this song. I had been writing it, and I was processing and like coming up with these words. And the first line that came out of my writing was, my feet are tired. This expression of like walking forward but being really weary. And as I was writing that, he said, what I love about the old spirituals is because they don't sing about where they are. They sing forward where they want to be. And so they carry you, so you have this leaning in. And so then the lyrics, I switched the lyrics. It was my feet are strong, and my eyes are clear. I cannot see the way from here. So honest, but like pulling forward. And so this song called God's Highway. Here in the middle of the different kind of things I do. So it's not quite church music, but it's also not quite all, it's obviously gospel centric. But I can teach that in a neutral setting where, like, neutral meaning where people are not, like, they're not believers or that we don't know, or, they may not really be on that particular journey or from a church. So it's cool to find that space. One of the things I love is just, even in folk music singability, like to bring people together by way of singing. A couple weeks ago, I played in Orlando and we played at like this art market. And so it was very general. I mean, there were lots of people with a church background there, but it was a mix. And to do that song and other songs like it, it was like pretty thrilling to see those things come together. And I think you can be a part of that in the South in particular, but sometimes surprisingly in the North too. So, different. It's amazing how people respond in different ways in different places, like from one season to the next. That's an interesting social observation. What you guys have researched that, but it is, as far as songs and what strikes a chord with people, it varies.
Yes. I was interested, when we had some experience playing in Ireland or other places like that, and whites that also seem to have more appreciation for the art there. Just sort of explain why you think that was, and I was just curious about that.
Yeah, so I partnered with a label based out of London in around 2005 or 2004, and so I did some touring over there. And I mean, I think there's just a different landscape as far as they love country and Americana music in the UK especially. But the record that I was working on at the time was called Best Laid Plans. It was pretty poppy. It was like kind of, not slick pop, but rootsy kind of pop. And so it fit well in that market. And so I do think I don't know exactly why that is. My family roots are from Northern Ireland, and when I would travel around here, it's funny because like there are a lot of people that have the same sort of features and kind of hair color, and like so Sandra McCracken, even that name was a very common name. Be like Joe Smith, And so it was like kind of funny to travel and then have conversations with them and be surprised that they now their accent. So, kindred people and places.
Can you talk to us about how classical training and your work in kind of folk popular styles, and if you have a music degree, and how has all of that merged into informing your art and your life and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I was just thinking about a week ago, I was making a lead sheet after writing on a melody. I was like, I haven't retained very much of that. It's been kind of out of practice because I'm used to mainly just making functional charts and stuff for me, for my own books, or for the band, which is like a simpler work of translation. So working at the church has brought back some of those classical skills that I haven't had to use in a while. And it does come back, I mean, it's not quite like riding a bike. You really have to dig back into the practice of knowing and notation. And Nashville has that whole structure of the number system and how people notate stuff, that I feel like even within that, everybody has one particular version. So I have so many musicians within the church that have different backgrounds. So I know, okay, Lauren really likes the charts with chords written above them, and she likes it written above all the verses. And I know, Bob really has to have it, the whole lead sheet. I mean, so I'm kind of accommodating and just building the book of charts for everybody to have what they need. And it's good, but it's been good practice. My classical training, I wanted more from that. I remember having my classical voice teacher that basically said, you're not going to be good at both, so don't even try, so I don't even worry about it. And I was so bummed. I was like, I really want to be good at this. And I didn't have the natural skill for that Well, I mean, I think you can learn it, I think you can develop it, for sure. But my head voice is not as strong as, and so I felt kind of it's kind of like, singing the art songs, and, but I loved it, I really loved being exposed to all of it, and then being able to choose and find my comfort zone as far as creativity. But I think that having a healthy sense of curiosity about stuff that you're not good at is so good to affirm in each other, and to be willing to take risks and to, try a jazz piece or try an instrument that you haven't before, just even for no other reason than to just be kind of disrupted a little bit, and to have an appreciation for something that, and some of you guys might be people that just pick that up and virtuoso right away, but, because there are people that just, can do that, but, it's good to be stretched and to keep leaning into the things. So my professor, he might have been right, but if I were teaching, I wouldn't say that, I would push somebody to say if that's uncomfortable, feel it, and let it spit you out on the other side and become stronger because you had an area of vulnerability and weakness, So, that's part of the experience here. You get to do that in a safe place, where you can take risks. So, the habit of taking risks becomes part of your life. And man, in the gospel, what else? What do we have to be afraid of? Our reputations, or being perfect, or being awesome all the time. It's how many things? People know. We can't hide from each other. So we might as well get real in terms of letting each other into that and being vulnerable in a really practical way when we rehearse and when we make mistakes. We don't have to be defensive. And when we can reciprocate kindness to each other as collaborators, it really shapes us, I think, as people more than just, and it also probably improves our art. Yeah, that's what we're making. So, I forgot I'm talking to Mike. Sorry. Thanks.
Could you play one more song for us?
What if I do, how about one of the kids' songs? This is a, let's see, Eugene Peterson has a translation of the Lord's Prayer that I borrowed for the end of
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here.